Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the True Path Entrepreneur, your guide to living your purpose and growing a freedom-based business you love. I'm your host, Beth Weinstein. I'm a transformational business coach helping current and aspiring entrepreneurs align with their true purpose and grow your business so that you can help more people and do what you love on your own terms from anywhere on earth. And today, I'm really excited to be talking with my friend, Heather Allison. Hey, Heather, welcome.
Hello.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. So Heather helps you activate the divine feminine energy within you to become the vessel for receiving that you're meant for. We currently live in a world that has taught us only one half of the story, one half of our archetypal power, abilities, and purpose, creating the feeling that something's missing, that there's supposed to be more, that if we just knew that one thing, everything about our lives would stop feeling so hard and start feeling like pleasure. Well, that's actually true. And Heather helps you remember and access that archetypal blueprint within to help you access the more that you're meant for. Working with Heather in any one of her online or personally guided courses creates a paradigm shift and helps you repattern the energy of your life, your relationships, your business, even your connection with your intuition, and allows all facets of your life to feel greater ease, deeper pleasure, and more abundant success and magic. Oh, Heather, I love talking to you. This is some of my favorite stuff to hear about. So for those of the listeners that don't know who you are, can you tell people a little bit about your own journey into teaching this form of divine feminine leadership, embodiment, the archetypes, all that you're on? Tell people.
Yeah. It's still my favorite question because I'm trying to get it shorter and shorter and shorter. But the nutshell of it is I was doing the 9-to-5 grind, literally hopping around from job to job, after a few years here and a few years there, trying to figure out what it was that actually lit me up and what it was that I was supposed to be doing. And I actually thought that I didn't have like a career purpose in this lifetime. I was like, well, maybe that's just not my thing. I watched everybody around me kind of, climbing the ladder and doing the things and feeling happy about it and liking what they were doing. And I was like, I don't feel really like drawn to do that. And so I just kind of thought that maybe I didn't have a purpose. And then about 3 years ago, basically just went through this massive kind of spiritual awakening, if you will, got cracked wide open, started receiving information about these archetypes, which are energy patterns that exist within us and around us in the universe, and like the quantum understandings of them. And right around, of course, the time that I also got laid off from that job. So I was like, well, okay, so this is what we're doing. So that's my shortest version of that. But basically it kind of feels like I was like, oh, hey, it's time for you to start doing this, and kind of got plucked out of what I was doing and then thrust into this. I mean, I had to say yes to this over and over and over again. So it's not like I was forced into it, but every single time I said yes to this, and this is kind of one of those things I feel like I want your listeners to hear. Every single time I said yes to that calling, that nudge, that even if it was like, oh my God, are you serious right now? Are you kidding me? That it opened something else up, like exponentially opened up more and more and more. So that's what I'm continuing to do.
Yeah, no, I love this story because it's very similar to mine. And then some of the other experts on the series, I always say if you don't go and start making actions and start following your heart and doing what you're actually here for, the universe will do it for you. And it's exactly what happened to me. I was already on this path. I already knew something was off, and then I got laid off and kind of went through a very similar thing. And kind of like you, I kept I was literally having people tell me you should be a coach. And I didn't even know what that was. And I was like, what? And I actually didn't say yes for a few years. And then I kind of started like, oh, that curiosity thing. Let me see how this goes. And so I'm curious, in this path to coming into the saying the yes and the archetypal download, what have you discovered about these archetypes and how people can apply them, not only to business, but to, finding a purpose and to life? And, how do we use these?
Yeah. So, just as a little bit of background, the archetypes, like I said, are energy patterns that exist within us and in the universe around us. And what has happened in essence is that we've been, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners, your followers have heard or seen some of this talked about before, maybe even on other of these calls, other of these interviews. But the two primary archetypes are the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And we've very much been living in over masculinized, archetypal, energetic pattern for thousands and thousands of years. And so what that's done is basically like made it so that we're kind of, I always use this example of like, we're like running a race with one leg. And so we're literally like without half of our abilities, half of our capacity, half of our potential, half of our ability to access our greatest possibility and our soul's purpose. And to kind of tie that into what you're asking, it's interesting because it's true that the universe does start to kind of do it for you if you're not really listening, but it's not like it just kind of hands you the whole thing. You really do have to get to a place where you say yes and start taking action in service of what you're saying yes to. And usually that's going to be kind of uncomfortable, but it's like what the universe, I feel like, does is kind of like squeezes you a little bit tighter and tighter and tighter, making you more and more uncomfortable until you're ready to say yes if you're not listening. But the feminine archetype really embodies openness and pleasure and flow and ease and all of these things that are and also like receiving. And so if we're kind of having the nudge and that little feeling like, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but it doesn't make sense, or I don't know how, or nobody else is doing that around me, all the things that we're trying to rationalize about it, then that's my cue that we're stuck in the masculine. We're stuck in what I call the wounded masculine, because that's all we can do and all we can see is what we can rationalize and think about, instead of following these deeper sensations, intuition, emotion callings and saying yes to them, if that makes sense. And so part of this is actually get out of your head. Stop looking around you at everybody else is doing or at what makes sense and what you think you're supposed to be doing and the shoulds and all the expectations and everything else. And can you start to let yourself follow the thing that feels actually more expansive instead of more narrowing? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I completely know what you're talking about, because I went through those, the nudges to the point where, like you said, the squeezing is such a good analogy. It was like, oh my gosh, I guess I should really start listening, because the signs couldn't be any more clear, and it was literally already pulling that direction to the point where, I always tell the story how I got my first client without trying. It was just someone, I finally asked for money. That was the only shift. And then next thing you know, I had a business, but
that's uncomfortable, right? And that's where we get stuck. That's where sometimes we get stuck. It's like, but I don't know if I can. And that's what keeps us. Or if we think, but I don't know how and what it's supposed to look like. Well, we're not supposed to know what it looks like. We're not supposed to know the 10 steps out. We're supposed to know this one. Then when we take that one, then more opens up to us. I've had the biggest breakthroughs and the biggest like catapults in my business when it just happened again recently when I sat down and like connected to my team and was like, what do you ask? Because I was having a little bit of a human tantrum is what I call it. Because I was like, what is going on? Why is this? Because it still happens. And I sat down to really like ask like, okay, show me what you want me to be doing then. And I got an answer and I was like, really? That's what? Okay. Like, I kind of completed that meditation session with like, holy shit. Okay. So I guess I have no idea how yet. This is going to unfold and I have no idea what it's necessarily going to look like, but that's not my job right now. My job is to listen and take the first step.
It's so funny. I make jokes. I told my business coach that, a few months ago, I was like, it's really weird. I keep getting all these messages that are just telling me to meditate more.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does this mean? She's like, you actually need to start meditating more. And I was like, damn, man. And it's crazy. I was like, that doesn't make any sense, but okay, I'm going to try it. And I literally started manifesting clients more and more.
Yes. And that is one of the biggest like holdouts of the wounded masculine is that, but I can't, I have so much to do.
Yeah.
I don't have time. And that's this idea that what we feel like we're being called to is going to take all of these steps and all of this doing and so much work, and it's going to take all my time, where actually if you prioritize sitting down in the morning, and I always advocate for a morning practice, if you sit down and let yourself receive, instead of going by the to-do list, which is, I know we're so conditioned to use and we're so addicted to, but if we actually let ourselves receive what wants to be done that day and let go of the control of the like linear idea of what it's supposed to look like, everything starts to unfold around and for us and with us. Like, we don't have to do so much work. It's basically like, if you can sit down on your mat and meditate first with the intention of receiving, you actually get to partner with the universe instead of doing all the work yourself.
I love it. I love it. And actually, that was going to be my next question. So, when people start to hear these nudges or feel them, I always tell people, well, that's a sign. If you're getting the same thought over and over, the same intuition that's like, I'm meant to be doing this. I'm meant to be doing this. I know I'm feeling like doing this, but then they just sit on it. And I know, because I sat on my first business for 8 years before I started any actions towards it. But what do you tell people who are kind of getting that nudge, but then they're not actually doing anything? How do you tell them to listen? Like, what's the trick to really starting to live in this different paradigm?
Mm-hmm.
How do people even retrain themselves to get into this new mindset?
Yeah. I think, again, this is one of those, like, all the fears and all of the rationalizations and all the things that we tell ourselves and try to kind of like the control, the idea that we have any kind of control whatsoever. We don't. Hint, we don't. Mm-hmm. Is what keeps us stuck and keeping us from taking any kind of movement forward. Because again, I think that we want to have this like 25 steps in front of us laid out before we take the first one, or we want the thing to come to us and be like, I'm ready, here you go. And it doesn't work like that. Like, anybody that Oprah, like Richard Branson, nobody had it just like thrust in their hands. And my bet is they are incredibly soul guided, and they hear that. Even if they don't know, I mean, I'm sure both of them actually do know that now, but even if they didn't realize that's what was happening before, I'm certain that they were like, well, fuck it. I'm going to take this step. But what I would invite you into is stop waiting for the whole plan. You're never going to have the whole plan. It's not about having a whole plan. It's about weaving the pieces together. So can you take the one like tiniest, babyest step here right now and let the next one come in that wants to come in, and let it be perfect, instead of having this like, but I think it's supposed to look like this. Can you just take the babyest step right now and let it like towards that thing that you're being called to, even if it seems like, but that's nothing. It doesn't matter, because this is one of the things I share with my clients all the time is movement begets movement. If you take that little step, you're going to get something else, and it's going to come, something else to work with. And it's like, you won't have that something else to work with unless you take this first step. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It takes a willingness to be at your edge. It takes a willingness to get uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, if you're trying to create something new in your life, bring in something new in your life, you can't do that from the space that you've been inhabiting already. It has to be by coming just outside of that space, by stretching the bubble a little bit farther. That's when you gets to come in.
Yeah, I love it. You mentioned the edge and getting uncomfortable. And this is totally, it's like people have heard this before, this is where the magic lies, but it's so true. It takes, like stepping off that ledge over and over and over and over. Mm-hmm. But, what is it? Is it really just fears that are stopping people? Like, I mean, I get so many clients coming to me at this point where they're like, I just can't take it anymore. Or I've started a business, but I'm just stuck. Like, I'm really stuck and it's been a year or two and I have no clients. Like, and in the end, I always find that it's themselves, it's just their limiting beliefs. It's all this stuff in their head. And I teach the same thing, like really about letting go of attachment and follow the path of joy, see what happens, try surrendering for a year and prove it to yourself. But, what's going on inside?
Mm-hmm. I love this question because it is all the things. It's all the things that we've been conditioned with, like we've been talking about. But the other piece here, and this is the thing that I am grateful to have been receiving so that I get to teach my clients, is that, sorry, I have like cat hair all on my nose. It's like totally tickling every time I start talking, is everything that we're seeing, everything that we've been taught for the most part, every example that we're given, every template that we're given from another, like from a marketing coach or a sales coach or business coach or whatever that looks like, has been built on the wounded masculine paradigm. And then call it the wounded masculine paradigm because it's been out of balance for thousands of years. And so when you have something that's just kind of operating in the masculine and it's just going about its business and it's never balanced and checked and supported with its partner, it just continues to like round in on itself and rewound itself over and over and over again. So we're, as you can see, in our lovely world right now, this is what we're working with. This is what we're living within, is this massively wounded masculine paradigm. And everything that has been built in business, especially because business as we know it, corporations, business as we know it, was built within that wounded masculine paradigm. And so if we're stretching ourselves and getting outside of our own conditioning, but we're still taking on templates from what has been and trying to have it work, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because it's not going to feel good to you. It's going to feel narrowing and constrictive to you, but it's not going to feel good to your clients or your potential clients or your audience. It's going to feel narrowing and constrictive or controlling or manipulative or pressury or whatever. And so part of this is, and this is why I love the work that I do, because we really hit at like all the different levels. It's physical, like body, cellular, visceral, it's energetic, it's emotional, it's also practical. So if you're doing all the inner work and the practical isn't matching, or conversely, if you're doing all the practical work and you're not doing any of the inner, you're not, again, in balance, and it's going to continue to keep wounded. And so it might work for a second, it might work for a minute, and then it'll start repatterning itself back into the wound, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so long way of saying, you actually have to change the way you're doing business as well. It no longer works to be selling and marketing the way we used to. In fact, one of my previous coaches went to a conference sometime last year, I think it was, when we were working together. And she came back and she was like, this is like a massive marketing, like super marketing bigwigs, super professional, like successful, like multimillionaire marketers. And apparently all they were talking about the entire time is why isn't it working the way it used to work anymore? And I was like, yes, because mama's coming home, like divine feminine is actually coming home, and everybody's starting to feel it, even if we're not aware of it. So that's part of the shift, has to be a shift in how we do as well. Does that make sense?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is going to be my next question. There's one other guest on this in the series where I mentioned this. I was like, look, I don't know about you, but I've been picking up on bullshit for a long time.
Yeah.
I've always been very sensitive. I come from this background, it's in consumer products, and I always knew everything was a big sham, right? And but then even within this industry that's, like we're all here to help each other, and doesn't even matter what industry. To me, it's just all business, right? Especially in the Western world. But to me, I'm like, oh, everybody's just starting to become aware, whether they know it or not. Like everybody sees through the BS. Everyone knows when the heart is not in the marketing, and when it is just, feeding you, pure marketing or pure fear tactics, or pure, like I just called the BS. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been done with the BS for so many years that it just it's not in my life. Like it's out. But then, I was wanting to ask you about this. Like, do you think people are starting to pick up on this, whether they realize it or not? And what is the future of, business world? And, not just what we do, but like literally, like, I picture the whole world. The whole world is going to change because no one's going to buy into it anymore. But what are your thoughts on this?
I completely agree. It's that thing that you notice. Yes, everybody is starting to have this wake up within them at varying levels. Obviously, some are more kind of open and ready for it. Some are kicking and screaming a little bit, and probably might continue to. But this is the idea that, like, when you have an email subject line that says like, these are the 5 reasons you'll fail at blah, 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 or whatever. And I'm like, delete, like unsubscribe, like anybody who's going to talk, or like the Facebook posts or whatever, Instagram posts that you find that are like, if you're not doing these 5 things, or 70% of businesses fail in the first blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't need your, like, it's going to be a shift into, instead of scaring somebody into buying, scaring somebody into taking action, or squeezing them into taking action, or even like fear of missing out, like the FOMO thing, like 24 hours left, like even that shit, as much as that's like kind of innocuous, it still is like you're praying. Like, notice what that does to you. If it's when you're receiving that, you're preying upon somebody's fear. And that's just going to beget more fear. And so even if they sign up to work with you, they're going to be operating from more fear. And so are you. And so it's like the cycle continues. And this is, so you'll find yourself like scrolling past that stuff faster and faster, or unsubscribing or unfollowing. And people are going to feel more and more congruency or not. with people. And that means, are you in alignment is such like a buzzword, but it basically like, are you being your fullest, most authentic, most soul aligned self, internally and externally?
Yeah.
And are you allowing for, this is another really big one that my goddesspreneur clients, it's a very big shift in how we work, which is, are you marketing and supporting your clients or your customers or doing sales from a place of sovereignty? Meaning, are you actually in service of their sovereignty, of them choosing you if they feel called to? That's going to be huge, because that's one of the, I feel like that's one of the last strongholds, is there's still this idea of, I need to get you into my business. I need to get you as a client, or I need to somehow talk you through the thing that feels like an objection, or that it has you not buying so that you buy. And that is going to blow up in our faces if we keep doing it.
I agree. And it's funny because I have talked to a couple people in this series who are approaching sales from a very similar standpoint, in service, pure service. And I always tell people, again, like, to me, the energy just comes through on the phone. Like, when you are desperate, and I know a lot of new entrepreneurs are like this. I mean, I get it. And, like I've been there many years ago, but the more desperation and the more like you're not in it for them, but for yourself, the more they feel it. And to me, that's, I don't know about you, but I just go by vibe. I'm like, you know what?
Totally.
My stomach says that this person is kind of sketch and I'm not going to sign on. But I always tell people, like, look, like, and I usually say to them, like, hey, whether it's me or someone else, I'm pretty open. Go with the vibe, go with how you feel, go with like the energy that you're feeling, because if someone's really truly there and going to help you and serve you, versus someone who's just like me. And
totally.
it's hard because it is a total paradigm shift. We've all been taught one thing and here's the other thing, but I don't know about you, and I'm pretty sure everybody who gets it knows this is true, but the less attached I've been, and the more from that place of heart and service, and like, hey, I'm on a mission. My mission's big. And the only reason I want you to work with me is because, you have to stop working at this job that's making you suffer, because the whole world is suffering, and you're here to actually do something bigger. Yeah. And that's when my business started taking off more. The more I was feeling into that way of being. Now, so I was going to ask you a little bit more about, a lot of this sounds like intuition, and I'm sure you weave this into your teachings. Now, how do you feel about intuition in business, and like, how much is intuition versus, I don't even know what the opposite of intuition is. Practice business. Yeah.
Template, probably.
Template. Yeah.
Or the shoulds, or doing what is expected, or what have you. I mean, honestly, my entire business is built on my online course. I woke up with one morning, literally the entire structure, the price points, everything. Like I said, this next step of mine that I'm like, wait, what are you having me do right now? Actually, a couple of really big steps that are feeling really kind of edgy for me are both things that I was guided to, that I received intuitively. And I know that can kind of sometimes feel like exclusive for some people. If they're like, well, I'm not intuitive, how do I? Well, first of all, bullshit, because you are. But you just haven't been taught how to access it. And second, your body knows. If we actually started listening to our bodies more and making decisions, oh my God, everything would change so drastically. I can't tell you how many times I've been on calls with potential clients, and they, because we can talk ourselves into anything, literally can. I mean, if you watch any form of debate, you can see, because these people are given a random side of the topic and asked to debate it, so they can. So we literally, that's what our brains are capable of. We can actually talk ourselves in and out of anything and in circles for infinity. But if we drop into our body, we have so much more information waiting for us. And so it's the difference between, I think about this, and I'm going to make a decision about this, and how does it actually feel? Like, what's actually happening in your body when you think about doing this one thing? What is it actually? So a lot of times on my calls with clients, or potential clients, I'll ask them that question. And when they feel into joining one of my programs or something, they'll be like, I just felt my shoulders drop. I just felt like something about my heart just felt expansive. And if they think about not, there's like something about the pit of their stomach, or, you know, whatever, it shows up in your body. And so if you can, even as a business owner, start making decisions from that place and letting yourself be guided by what you can't make sense of. It's so edgy, I know, but if you let yourself be guided by what you cannot make sense of, you will, because again, what we can make sense of is already here. Right? Like what you can make sense of is already here. And if you're only operating in that space, then you're never going to expand out beyond where you are. That's the bottom line. I feel like, put a pin in that one.
Yeah. And I love it, because I mean, I totally feel the same way. And it's like, you know what? It's more fun. It's more fun. It's, you know, every day is like a new exciting life. You know, it's like an adventure. And even the biggest challenges, like you said, it's like sometimes you get these intuitive, you know, like, how the F am I going to pull that off? Or like, oh, can I really do this? And then you do, and you're like, wow, that was really fun. That was easy. And it was actually, you know, it's like, life would be really boring if we just kind of stayed stagnant and did the same thing we've been doing for, you know, 10, 20 years. And that's like what we're trying to teach. Right. And this is my biggest mission, is like, no, we're not actually supposed to live life like that. Like life is here is like, this is a gift, and we are actually supposed to be in abundance and joy and magic and fun. And yes, it's going to be challenging at times and scary, but that's the whole point. And that's where all the amazing magic shows up.
And it doesn't have to be, like, it really doesn't have to be. This is the biggest lesson in this paradigm shift is, like I said, the feminine is all about pleasure, and she's all about ease, and she's all about flow. So nothing that even if it feels scary, if we're focusing on embodying more and more and more of our divine feminine archetype, this energy pattern, it will start to dissolve and open up for us and with us. And it doesn't have to feel so scary and so hard. Yeah.
And it's so much better, I think.
Obviously. And well, I mean, that whole feeling of like, I don't know, it just feels like something's missing, or I don't know, it just feels like there's supposed to be more to this, or I don't know, I thought it was going to be easier. That literally is your soul's calling card going, like, you know, and so pay attention to that when you feel that. Pay attention and let yourself start to see, just shift, just flirt with what's in the more expansive direction for you.
Exactly. I so love that you're teaching all this. Now tell people a little bit more about your free gift, Embody Your Inner Goddess. And by the way, I'm really glad you talked about, you know, I call it like body wisdom, listen to your body, because it is so true. And I love that there's been 3 or 4 guests that have mentioned this at least once during interviews. And I'm like, yes, this is finally becoming a little more normalized. People are starting to hear more about this, like listen to your body. So what is the embodiment of an inner goddess all about?
Yeah. So this, like I said, my work works at a bunch of different levels. So there's a bunch of different facets of this free gift. So there's a PDF, which is my goddess manifesto. So it's basically like a transmission of kind of the tenets, the facets, the energies of the divine feminine. Several of them anyway, there's many. There is an initial kind of teaching, if you will, like an activation of your remembrance as far as like how to understand what the hell these archetypes are and how they show up in our lives, and kind of help you tap into your own remembrance of them. There's a bit of an example of kind of sneak peek at my online course. There's a workbook, and there is, for those who like to kind of put pen to paper and really kind of bring it in that way. And then there's an audio exercise, which is very much about getting into our bodies and really shifting the frequency of how we are down here, and getting into the feminine. So it's pretty rich.
That was awesome. Everybody be sure to get the free gift in today's email. It's on the link. And then Heather, tell people a little bit more about where to find you, anything you have upcoming in the next few months or year, and what you have going on.
So a couple things. Well, you might find, depending on when this airs, my website's being worked on. So if it's under construction, come back. But I'm at heather-allison.com, ALLISON. Right now, I'm in the middle of my Goddesspreneur course, which is basically a paradigm shift into the feminine way of doing business for entrepreneurs. I do that once or twice a year. I've just opened the gates for Golden Goddess, which is my annual kind of quantum leap mastermind, which is basically like, we do everything in there. It's, you know, you get the dive into the feminine. There's some of business that we do in there. There's cracking into your intuition. There's we get to focus on shifting the energy in your relationships between you and your partner. So it's kind of everything. It's 9 months long, and it starts next year for 2019. And I'm coming out with, I have one available so far. I'm coming out with a handful of kind of mini courses that are a little bit bite-sized. So the one I have available right now, more are coming, is called Join Me, and it's the art of the soulful sales invitation. So it's really about how to do sales in the feminine paradigm.
I love it. And that's so important. And I'm so glad you made that course, because we all know this. So many entrepreneurs struggle with sales, and this is definitely the more effective way of doing it. It's more fun, and it's better for everybody in the end. So Heather, thank you so much for being with us. Everybody, be sure to grab your free gift in today's email. And yes, I will see you again on another interview series, Heather. I love having you. I love your work so much. It's so important you're out there teaching this.
I'm always a yes.
Yeah.
I'm always a yes. Ask me anytime. I'd love to hang out with you again.
Great. Thank you. And everybody, be sure to join us tomorrow. We're going to have more interviews on the True Path Entrepreneur. See you then.